Hey folks, Dave from Nerdarchy, for nerds by nerds, and today I'm hanging out with Ty Rutger from Crypt Monkey Studios. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing pretty good, Dave. Thanks for having me on.
You're quite welcome. So, you're a relatively new company. You've got one game out already. You're working on getting a second one out. We were just talking about RPGs a little bit. You're going to do something, and you plan on doing something in that arena as well. So, exciting stuff.
Yeah, it is fun. The RPG stuff, we've started out with the board games, so the RPG stuff should be, development should start later this year. I think, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to get players involved at the cons and stuff like that too, and maybe a stream or something too.
Cool. So when you think of yourself, do you think of yourself as a tabletop gamer or an RPG gamer?
Oh, I used to think of myself as an RPG gamer, and with I kind of just before the sort of renaissance started of the tabletop and board game stuff, I obviously all my friends were getting into it, so I was playing more board games. So now I'm a tabletop gamer. Before I was more RPGs.
You've metamorphosed. You've come out of a cocoon like a beautiful butterfly.
Right. That's it. A gamer butterfly. I dig it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's funny because I asked because when we originally started the channel, my brother wanted to do indie board games, and while I enjoy playing them, I don't really consider myself a board gamer or a tabletop gamer as much as RPGs. So we kind of just like started off with like a broad spectrum and figured kind of like found our feet. And really, the audience ended up telling us where to go anyway, which worked for me because Ted is a huge board gamer. If you look at our old videos where we have the chairs set up in front of his one of his board game shelves, that's all that's behind us.
Yeah. And something else that helps me anyway too is that where I might lean more towards RPGs, my wife probably leans more towards the board game, so we balance each other out and make sure that both's playing both types of games. So
So, how much does that influence when you're creating new games?
the types of games that I do play, you mean?
Being coming from like a heavy RPG background and then developing board games.
I think it does it, especially. So our first game, Jack the Ripper, is a bluffing social deduction game. And one of the things I like to say on that guy when I'm telling people about it, who like role playing games, is that it's kind of like stretching exercises for your role playing game. And that's kind of how I thought of it when I was working on it too. Um, the hidden identity and having a character and stuff like that. It's like role play light. You don't have to have an in depth backstory, but you're still sort of taking on this persona, right? So that influenced it a lot. And story, right? So story's the big deal in RPGs, and I like to have a story for all of our games. Um, Probably a little deeper than I should, since it takes a lot of time to write these scraps that we have on the website and stuff too.
So right now you guys have Jack the Ripper up on your site, and you're in the final days of a Kickstarter for the Possession.
Yes, House of Possession, and that's a different one for me. There's still a good story there. The idea behind that guy is that you were at this rich friend's Victorian mansion for this party, and near the end of the party, just as everybody's just about to leave, these demons start hopping out and say, "Well, one of you guys gets to leave, and the rest of you are going to remain here as the food and playthings of demons for all eternity." Um, so the idea was to do this as our take on the European race board game, which usually has the track you're going to follow to the end, and the first one to the end is the winner. Um, Ours is a little more chaotic than that, in that the way that you win the race is by collecting exits from these escape deck cards that you draw, and everybody draws on everyone else's turn. Um, the board itself, you do move around. There's these rooms of the houses on the board, but that's sort of an implement of chaos, because the room that you're in on the board is actually something that you can be affected by being in that room when these possession events come into play. So
So did you take any inspiration from Betrayer House on Hell with that? Because I know in the video you guys mentioned when the haunt happens, which immediately makes me think of that game.
Uh, so I love that game. First of all, that's our. What do you want to play? I don't know. What do you want to play? Cool. We're grabbing House on the Hill, right? But no, this I don't know that it had any other than being a dark atmosphere. It really didn't have any influence on it.
So, Complacent Badger wants to know what board game is hitting your table the most right now?
That's a good question. So, as we were talking about before, I don't get to play at home right now because we're in con season, but that doesn't stop us from buying games. I mean, we're buying all kinds of role playing games and board games. So, we're in one of those, we'll have parties with our friends to play games that none of us have played yet. Somebody will read the rules ahead of time before the party. So we're kind of in one of those phases. But as far as ones that hit the most, it's probably Blood Rage. That's probably the one that we play the most. I really enjoy that, and my wife loves Blood Rage. We just bought everything for it except for the original Kickstarter rewards.
We, or I should say Ted. Not we used to do a board game night once a month, and there would be board games going on in 3, 4 different rooms. So generally there was about 4 games going at a time. And then he went and had to go and have kids and ruin it all. That was the death knell of board game night.
That makes everything harder. Now my kids are old enough though that they'll game with us. My son a little less so. He likes video games more, but my daughters like to play the board games and role playing games with us.
So how did Jack the Ripper come about?
So we were finishing up a Pathfinder night, and this was like in, I don't know, 2012 or 13 or 14. It's been years ago, probably 5 years ago. And it was 2 a.m. of course, and we're all about to go home. And one of my friends, actually one of the eventual designers on the game, Paul Goff, said, "Well, what do you think about maybe we should work on trying to do our own game, like a conline game, something small." So let's get back together in a couple of days, and we'll figure out what ideas we can throw together. And we each threw 3 or 4 game ideas, just summaries together. And I guess so I thought, well, a hidden identity game where instead of you get voted off the island, like Jack's Granddaddy, Are You a Werewolf? That sort of game. Let's have hit points. Let's actually beat each other up in order to get out of the game and give the person a chance to maybe not die just because they've been found out to be the person. And then I thought, well, what kind of skin does this need? And well, we still don't know who Jack the Ripper is. So that's a perfect hidden identity game. Let's go with that, right? So that's kind of how that came about, was just a quick discussion after a Pathfinder night.
And you said you worked on it for like 3 years before that game came out.
Yeah, our initial development for Jack was probably less than a year. It was probably 8 months, something like that, where myself, James Paul Goff, Anthony Morris, and John Watson, we all worked on the rules and our own testing. And then for another 2 years after that, we started broadening out our testing and tweaking and stuff like that. So yeah, after about 3 years of testing and tweaking it, we felt it was done.
Did you find it hard to find people to play test with?
Yeah. And part of that's probably my fault. I don't think I go to our local game club enough. But then we also, we kind of, so during the preview of the game, we got a lot of good testing, because what we did is we figured out a way to do tournaments with Jack the Ripper, which is pretty fun. People were, at that time, the way the tournaments worked, they'd get into the game by winning as Jack the Ripper, that sort of stuff. And then once they got into the game, the tournament game, then it was, whoever could win as Jack. I think it was a lot harder of a tournament at that time, but that put us through a lot of testing, because we went from having every couple of weeks beside ourselves, having family members over or something like that, to, I don't know, there was probably 40 to 60 people that played it that one weekend, and we saw we were pretty good, though, honestly. There wasn't a whole lot of changes after that.
So, Complacent Badger wants to know, ballpark, how many games on your shelf of shame, games unplayed?
Probably half of them. I'd say there's over 20 games that still have to be played.
I know Ted's got like $3,000 worth of Conan sitting there, probably still in the boxes.
Yeah, and I'm just looking at the board games. That it's probably a worse percentage on the role playing side. There's probably out of 12 to 15 RPGs, we've probably only played 4 of them.
it's it's a little bit easier with board games because you can just grab those and kind of pull them out. RPGs are a little bit harder for the initial getting into. The rule books are much thicker.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And then on top of that, once you learn the rules, somebody's got to set up the game. Yeah, it's a little tougher.
So you had mentioned before we got started that you've been hitting a lot of conventions where you guys are boothing and running your games for people.
Yeah, which has been great. So it's being a small company. It's we really have to get out there and meet people anyway and introduce ourselves and doing things like this too, right? But when we get to meet people face to face, and especially, I mean, Jack was probably the perfect game to launch the company with, being the bluffing hidden identity. There's a lot of opportunity for kind of joking around the booth and being disruptive, and there's lots of yelling and laughing and stuff at our booth while everybody else is kind of sitting there selling books, and hopefully they get a little show out of it too.
Well, it becomes more of an experience, not just what's over at this booth.
Exactly, and that's what we're trying to do. We think that the games that we're working on deserve to have an experience wrapped around them anyway. So being able to kind of put it in front of somebody and show them how easy it is. Jack is a 2 to 15-minute game that takes a couple minutes how to learn to play the game. It's very simple game, which is another reason why it's easy to demo at the booth.
Now you're speaking my language.
The quick learning, yeah. House of Possession is too. House of Possession. The House of Possession is a little bit harder to learn. It's one of those games where you have like the first couple of rounds are kind of clunky. I do this, and then by the third one you get a rhythm to it. But it's also a really short game. It's a 2 to 15-minute game. Both of them, we call them primer games. We kind of built them. The idea in my head when we were working on those was that it's the game that's the opening act. So the main act of the night is, people are coming over for 5e or Pathfinder or Small World or whatever that main event is, right? And these games are intended to get you ready for game night. It's while you're waiting for people to show up. And even if somebody shows up in the middle of the game, they only have to wait for a couple of minutes, that kind of thing.
Being more of a casual, tabletopper myself, I've always enjoyed games that I can play fast.
Mm-hmm.
Like Betrayer is probably like the longest game I want to play.
Yeah.
I played Arkham Horror once and probably won't play it again.
Even if you enjoyed it.
Yeah, like if I'm gonna play a tabletop game for 6 hours, I'd probably just rather play an RPG.
Yeah, that honestly, that's usually the way I am too. But I mean, there are a couple that we play that take up hours at this point. I think we talked about before which one I am. Well, before, years ago, I probably would have been like, I'm not even going to sit down for a 6-hour game. Now at least I'll sit down for it.
Yeah. Now, that being said, I did used to really enjoy playing Hero Escape.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Which, the game itself doesn't take that long. It's just the setup and cleanup that takes long. Depending on what size board you're going to go with.
Uh-huh.
But I guess because it was more tactical and a strategy-based game, I found that a lot more fulfilling to play for, to invest a lot of time into.
Uh-huh.
But then, like, if I'm playing tabletop games, like, I like stupid games like Aliens or zombie dice games or like Smash Up's one of my favorites.
Uh-huh.
Quarriors. I guess I would rather play the same game a bunch of times than play one game over an extended period of time.
Yeah, that tends to be. I mean, that doesn't mean that we won't do the long games. I think we even have some long games planned in the next couple of years, but I'm not leading on those. Dawn's leading on those, being
Yeah.
more of a board game person.
And that being said, I do enjoy those occasionally. Like I do like Betrayer House on the Hill isn't exactly a short game, but I like that because it has like high replayability. So I guess that's
That's
a place
exactly
to
what
go
I'm saying.
too. Like with the games you're putting out, how much effort do you go into the, replayability?
Oh, I think that is second to story. I mean, you got to have a reason for people to come back and want to play again. And I think that's important because if they want to play again, then they're going to talk to other people about the game, and then maybe they're going to want to pick up the game, and so on and so on. But if somebody buys a game and they play it once or twice and they're like, that was all right, and they don't pick it up again, well, they're not going to talk about me anymore, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, I usually start with story, and then the next thing that's on my mind through the whole process is, are they going to want to do that again? Are they going to want to? Is there enough here for them to come back and play some more?
DM Don wants to know: will you be at PAX Unplugged?
Um, has that already happened this year? I'm
No,
so.
no, it's not until the end of the year. It's not end of November, beginning of December.
Then I can tell you for sure that we're not going to be there this year. I think next year we might try and get in.
Where are you guys going to be?
So next weekend we're going to be at Geekway to the West, which is kind of local to me. It's in St. Louis, which is a great board game convention. We're going to be hanging out at Gen Con this year. We don't have a booth or anything there. We're just going to be wandering around. People can kind of watch our Twitter feed and stuff like that. Like I mentioned to you beforehand, we might try some guerrilla gaming stuff or something like that. Like meet us here, or come find us, and we might give away prizes or something fun like that.
Because Gen Con's so small.
Right?
It'd be like a
Yeah.
Where's Waldo.
It's exactly it's an evil Where's Waldo. Not only because of Jack the Ripper, but also because that's a lot of people.
No, and Gen Con is huge.
Yeah.
As is Origins as well.
And we're going to be at Origins later this year too. We do have a booth for that.
Nice. Yeah, and there's plenty of gaming space at Gen Con, so you'll have no trouble like finding a place to set up and run some games.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. We did tournaments last year. We did events last year. And that was a lot of fun. I should have taken video of that. Actually, there was a group of guys. I mean, because they're playing to try and win a set of Jack the Ripper, and these guys just didn't care. They were having too much fun. They were role playing all of their characters. It's the only time I've seen anybody do this outside of maybe us goofing off. But yeah, and I think they got through maybe 2 games while everybody else was gaining points by going through all these other games, and they're like, "Oh, why would you hit a lady?"
That's kind of funny. Are there set characters to that game?
I'm sorry.
Jack the Ripper. Is there the Ripper game? Is there set characters to the game?
Yeah, there's Jack, and then there's 4 scavenger hunters. There's Victoria Beatty. Let me see. I'm going to use my cheat sheet. Clement Morgan and Elizabeth Chase, and where's he at? Walter Bennett. And we try to keep names from the time period. And there's lots of things actually in Jack the Ripper too that we're not. I mean, we try to keep to the period, but we're also there's a sword. There's a broken sword as one of the items. And this broken sword's hanging on a plaque, and it's got a little placard on it. You can't even read it, right? But Dawn did all the artwork for Jack. And I don't remember the name off the top of my head, but it's the name of a general that was very popular and famous in 1888. So we threw a couple of little things, historic Easter eggs, I guess, in there.
So can it be read with a magnifying glass?
That's a good question. I should try that. I mean, the only way I know I could read it is she would zoom the artwork way out. So
Oh yeah, I would imagine then you could
probably
if the artwork can be zoomed out. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, I wish I could remember that general's name now.
Well, she was in the chat. I don't know if she still is, but she was in the chat earlier. So
Oh, was she?
appearance has been made. Absolutely. So how did you guys come up with the possession game, House of Possession?
Oh, it's because I'm a sick and twisted man, I think. And so I think a lot of people like to come at a game from mechanics first. So I'd probably drive a lot of people nuts anyway, because I think of story first. And I've kind of analyzed, like, why do I do that first? Why do I figure out the story first? And I think so I've been a software developer for a long time. So I'm used to people coming to me and saying, I want something like this. And then I have to actually figure out what is the logic that makes that happen, right? So that's kind of how I design too. I'm like, what kind of story do I want to tell? And now what kind of mechanics do I need to tell that story? So
So
the idea behind it,
I don't know if
probably,
it's your way of getting revenge on yourself, or yeah, or maybe it's just you've just learned to think that way because you're always trying to solve other people's problems. With the how to after you figure out what.
yeah, because I mean, I don't have any control of what people would bring me, right? I just had to figure out how to make their vision happen. Now I kind of do it to myself.
Nice. So you came up with the story first, the idea of a party where there's a possession, or where there's demons involved, and then someone has to escape.
Right? Yeah. I think it was a nightmare. A lot of my, because I mean, that's everything we do. Even the more fantastic fantasy things that we're going to do in the future will have threads of darkness through them. Just that's again, I'm sick and twisted. That's just kind of one of the things that I enjoy. I like that creepy feeling, that sense in there. I want to play a game and feel that same way I felt at 17 years old, 16 years old, watching Creep Show or something. Um, yeah, I want to feel like Stephen King's the little devil on my shoulder saying, yeah, yeah, do that, do that.
Now I'm just wondering how many people that are watching the live chat are like, "What's Creep Show?"
Oh, yeah, I'm kind of showing my age there, aren't I?
Yeah, it's all right. It's all good. I was there. Creep Show and Tales from the Crypt were all great. Yeah, great shows from back in the day.
Great show. Yeah. So that's where I draw that what I want the game to feel like, is that sort of creepy sense that you felt when you were a kid watching those spooky shows.
So Dawn says she can't remember off the top of her head, and internet is spotty at work.
Oh, for that general?
Yeah, yeah. It's like, hey, I did my job. I immortalized it on the artwork.
Yep. She sure did. It's fun.
Yeah.
There's the brick machine in there. That is what they made bricks with in 1888. That's what she's got in the background. Just little details like that, I think, really kind of pumped it up.
Nice. So you mentioned that later this year you're going to delve into your first RPG. Is that something you want to talk about, or you want to keep that under wraps for now?
No, I talk about it. Obviously, Dawn's not here to tell me to shut up, but I'll try and restrain myself as much as I can. I mean, the first cool thing I'd like to talk about is the fact that we're going to crowd forge some of this stuff. So if people kind of watch out for that, we're going to make a game of crowd forging too, not just give me your ideas, but rather, let's share ideas, see what other people think about it, and when we do this at the conventions, we'll give out some fun gifts, some fun rewards, things you need in the apocalypse, and that's what the game's about. The game is I got to be careful, right? But so the game is my take on the apocalypse. It should be a little bit different than what folks have seen so far, and I will say this: that one of my goals is so. Okay, so we talk about board games and role-playing games, and some board gamers will not role-play, and some role players will not board game, right? Well, within role-playing, we also have folks that, back in the day, they'd only play vampire, or they'd only play werewolf, or they'd only play AD&D, or they had their thing that they played and that was it. And now I see people that will play fantasy. They're not really interested in sci-fi. They're not really interested in horror and stuff like that, right? So what I'm going to try to do is make this world in such a way that's palatable to all of those people too. Even if it's not like my first game session is that way, that after a couple of game sessions, they see the familiar elements that they like and enjoy in their realms of entertainment as well.
That sounds impossible. You can please some of the people some of the time, but you can't please all the people all of the time.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, if you see, I'm just throwing this out there, if you see a dragon there, I mean, it's a dragon. That's how I want to try to pull in somebody who enjoys fantasy. But you're still in the context of there's a broken down car on the side of the road that doesn't run right next to the battle. That sort of thing.
No, I get it. You want to try and go after the broadest swath possible as far as. So sounds like you're gonna have to do a lot of genre mashing.
I think I'm gonna have to do a lot of genre explaining. Is kind of the way I'm thinking about it. Like, okay, fine, there is a dragon there. Why is there a dragon there in the apocalypse? Which I do have some not so some ideas to the core of the story. Actually, there will be reasons why these things can be there.
So, master of the game, attempting to make a setting that includes everything and the kitchen sink. Sounds like riffs a little. James Leslie, very Reign of Fire-ish.
I should have mentioned the dragon.
Also, 4th edition, they relaunched another version of Gamma World off of the 4E mechanics, which is very much like that, where it like includes everything.
Yeah. And I don't want to mislead anybody. It's not a reach out and grab everything kind of game. I mean, at the core, it really is still a human drama, apocalyptic game, people with abilities sort of thing. But it'll have these elements of reaching into these other worlds.
So, are you thinking? Are you going to go with a class system, classless system, skills? Do you know what kind of engine you want to run with?
Yeah, right now we're working on the engine as classless, skill-based system, and we'll supply archetypes that people could kind of base their creation on. But probably one of the most interesting things about the system, and again I have to be careful, is we call it the Burst game engine. And this guy, the intention is to kind of provide you with a little extra excitement on certain rolls. So other things can happen. You're trying to do X, but then based on your roll, Y also happens, or Y and Z also happen. But then there's also a danger there in that you can be harmed by your own success. And in that way, I want people to feel like I'm really trying to do this, and wow, I did great, but it really drained me, that sort of thing.
So, a question in the chat from Master of the Game: will you only be able to be humans, or are you even that far along yet?
I am not that far along yet. I'm still open on, because there are other potential humanoid races that people will encounter that could possibly become PCs. I don't know for sure if that would be day one. The plan is a little over 2 years from now. Don't know the day one that's what's happening, but I mean, I like having choices, so that's probably a good indicator of where it will eventually at least allow you to go with characters.
So it's still kind of in the infancy. So by the time this game comes out as an RPG, how many board games do you think you'll have out by then?
That's a good question. I would hope at least 10 more. Because I still have, even this year, we have a couple of small games that we're working on. Another social interaction game that I'm supposed to work on just as soon as I have time after this Kickstarter's done, and sort of in hand with that, I'm also working on a one shot for a reskin on 5e that was created by Dice Geeks. Matt David's Dice Geeks created Realms of Understreet, which is anybody that watched. I'm dating myself again here. The Secret of Nim, which was the sort of sentient rats living in the bush and out in the field and stuff like that. It's got that sort of dark appeal, and I'm not usually into the anthropomorphic stuff, but this is a really great skin. It's a lot of fun. Sort of imagine yourself in the sewers under Manhattan, the world as it is, but it's this fantasy realm of rats and salamanders and stuff like that underneath Manhattan. So I have a one shot. I'm sorry, I totally mixed that up. I have a one shot based on one of his maps. I totally went off the rails thinking about Realms of Understreet. He has another map called Theranos that I am working on a one shot for that, actually. Wow. I'm tangent guy, by the way.
Yeah, no worries. The reason that
we play.
The reason I even asked that question though is because if I was creating an RPG and I had other games, whether it be tabletop games or whatever, I would definitely want to plant some Easter eggs from my games into the RPG.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah, definitely. Well, and the great thing is, hopefully we can reach that count because I'm not the only one working on it, right? Dawn's going to work on a lot of the board game stuff too, and eventually we hope to start taking game sheets from people too for smaller games, board games, and stuff like that.
Yeah, so yeah, especially it'll be a cool way to kind of like reward your fan base who kind of like follow you through all your different projects to get into that and like, oh, I know what this is, or.
And I'm tangent guy, so I'm sure some stuff will just end up in there accidentally. Right?
Well, I know that feeling as well. But like when you create something new and exciting that was created a few years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, just because I've got a lot of things rattling around in my head.
Yeah, that's pretty much me.
But at least when it's in my D&D group or at my D&D table, it doesn't matter so much. Matter of fact, like someone will be happy because they figured out an Easter egg that I didn't know I planted.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that's what I was doing all along.
It's the living world. It just sort of happens.
So when you do play tabletop RPGs, what do you usually play?
Well, so I mentioned this before as well. It seems like we play games less during the con season because we have a booth. We really have to work hard to schedule at the game cons to be able to do something. Board games are a little bit easier because we just go find an open play area and invite people to come play with us. But mostly what I play lately is 5e, I think. That skin that we've been playing from Matt David's Dice Geeks is a lot of fun, and I put a lot of time in, and that's probably why my tangent went off all like a madman there. I put a lot of time into the game that I'm playing for our group, or running for our group on that one. So that's probably the one we played the most. It used to be Pathfinder over the years. I started with AD&D. I've already dated myself. I'm going to say that. But yeah, mostly it's that. Now I bought a bunch more recently that are more like in sci-fi. Like we just got Rocket Age, which is by Ken Spencer. So I'm looking forward to putting something together for that pretty soon too. That's just like pulp. Early to mid-century sci-fi kind of heroes sort of stuff, right? Where you travel around the solar system to Venus and Mars and things like that. So that one looks kind of fun and interesting. We'll probably do something for that.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, we play a lot of D&D ourselves. Obviously, we've got like a channel where we talk about it a lot. Right. Then we try and like mix in some other things when we can find the time. And also, like we were saying before we even got started, is we're always on the lookout for other gamers to invite to our groups. They're like, hey, why don't you take a night for us and run something we haven't played?
Yeah. Oh, that reminds me. You got the good necromancer discussion stuff,
Yes.
right? So, have you seen Mythica?
Mythica. That sounds familiar with no.
So check those out. I was wondering if you watched those and was cussing the whole time because the main character's a necromancer.
Oh no.
You're not good.
So what is it? What is Mythica? Is it a show? Is it a?
It's a new movie series. I think they started in 2013, maybe.
Okay.
It's pretty good fantasy. Sorbo's in it for like a minute in each episode.
Wait, did they do a Kickstarter or something for that?
Oh, I don't know. Probably. I mean, I think it's in that range where they might want to. But they had pretty good effects and stuff, great choreography and stuff. Even though they're not, Steve Jackson or something doing it.
Yeah, I have to look into it. I seem to remember when we first started Nerdarchy, that there was a Kickstarter for a movie, and I think Kevin Sorbo was involved with it.
Maybe that's it.
And I don't know if it ever went anywhere or not.
But they've got 1 through 5 on Amazon Prime right now.
Okay.
I'm in the middle of a watch right now.
I will have to check that out. Amazon Prime, I have it, but it always slips under my radar.
You always forget you have it?
For some reason, yeah, absolutely.
It's nice to have the free shipping, though.
Yes, that's why I have it. And then there's all this other stuff that I have that I don't use.
Uh-huh.
So there is that. Yeah, I was a little disappointed with the discussions in the comments on the good necromancer. They just wanted to fight with me about raising dead and it can be good, even though in the monster manual it says they're evil monsters.
I'm kind of with you on it, especially in that realm. It's a great discussion, though, right? People really feel about this one.
Yeah, all the edgelords come out, the emo goth kids. I'm like, where did the bullies touch you in high school? Kind of. But yeah, it's like, no, you can use the dead and make evil creatures and not be evil. They always want to use the argument of, well, if you use a sword. I'm like, well, the sword won't do anything if I leave it alone.
Yeah.
It just sits there, but the zombie will go eat somebody's brains.
Well, so I was watching you guys talk about it the other day, and I had the idea of maybe maybe you could make it into, and you guys had another idea for a selfless idea. I don't remember what it was, but the idea that, okay, look, I only raise bad people, and by doing so, I have them served for good purposes.
Yeah.
And I give them some sort of a check mark in the afterlife that helps them and hurts me. Like, I'm going to hell for doing this, but I'm helping these bad guys get a little higher up on the bad planes or something.
Yeah. I don't know. Just my thing is, you cannot fix evil with evil. Is at the end of the day, like, you can't do bad stuff and call it good.
Yeah.
So that's always going to be my argument. Although we are going to be we are working on some good undead, but it's going to be completely different. But as is, if you animate dead from the monster manual, none of them are good. None of them are even neutral, and left to their own devices, they will just do evil. So that is the problem with that. But we're going to look into it and do some other things. I do like the idea of a good necromancer, just not one that animates dead. I like in the Dresden Files.
Oh.
They have Mort Linquister, which is an echomancer, and he kind of becomes this recluse and charlatan type character that people end up not liking, but they don't really fully understand the person. Like, he's this super powerful echomancer, and everyone thinks he's way less powerful than he is, but he's constantly being bombarded by spirits. So it's hasn't driven him crazy, but it's driven him, away from people, and then like all the people that he deals with are dead people.
Oh, no.
So yeah, one of the abilities that he uses really cool is he has one of the spirits inhabit him, so that doesn't take over him but inhabits him and gives him access to that person's skill set they had in life.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I have not read those. I've heard great things about them. Sounds like I probably should read them.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely, I enjoy it. It's a series that I feel like starts off good and gets better.
Uh-huh.
So I mean, it's up to they've got quite a few of them out at this point. Although I'm still waiting for the next one. It's been years since he's put out a book. It's always a problem with like successful authors. They need to like stay. They need to be successful after they're dead so that I can keep getting books. It's a terrible thing to say, but it's like they get success and it's like, I'm gonna go enjoy life instead of writing books.
It's a good point, though. You look at like Game of Thrones or whatever. And
Yeah.
like, this year. No, not this year.
Yeah, it's like all of a sudden it's all hookers and blow, and they're not writing any books anymore. They're making too much money. So, here, like we're never gonna like Game of Thrones. We're never gonna see those books. They're not coming out.
Yeah.
Plus, I did read somewhere is like George R. R. Martin also was involved with a series called Wild Cards, which is they're all like anthologies. They call them like mosaics, where it's a bunch of stories in one book, like an anthology, except for like there's a series of 23, 25 books or something that are involved. And he kind of like got it started, and I think he does like the editing on it now. And I think it came from one of his Champions games. And I read somewhere that he like just took a year off from writing and doing anything just to play Champions.
Wow.
Which, when I hear a story like that, and then I see the success of something like Game of Thrones, I'm like, yep, that guy's going to be done. He's a little older. He's not in the best shape. There's no way we're going to see the end of this series.
Well, maybe he'll get more famous.
Yeah, but more famous isn't going to make more books happen.
No. I was alluding to the when he dies thing.
Yeah.
I'm also a bad person.
Yeah, well, what are you gonna do? But he's got it. He's been able to license Game of Thrones on so much stuff. It's like that guy doesn't have to do anything anymore.
Yeah.
And literally, right?
I haven't played it. But.
Literally, when the last book came out, I don't know, what was it, a decade ago or something? The last book came out, and he's like, "Oh, there's gonna be delay because I wrote too much, and the books are so big, I have to split them in half." And like he kind of like changed how he was doing the narrative, and it was like the book that came out was going to be in these regions, and the other book that he had to split it in half for are going to be these other regions. Well, we still haven't seen that other half of this book that was supposedly written.
It's hard. It's tough.
Brian F. Dave, you didn't see an announcement of Fire and Blood. It's a history. I don't want the history. I want him to just finish writing the series. I don't want the other stuff to happen before. I want him to finish the series that he started.
Yeah. Well, it was supposed to come out last year, wasn't it? And then he backed it up again, I thought.
I feel like he's been doing that for like 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
It's coming. It's coming. I don't remember what the last one was. I think it was like Feast of Crows, and and it was supposed to come out. It was supposed to come out like within a year or two of that book, and that feels like my brother might have been in college still then. So so I don't know how long ago it was. I mean, at least we got this series on HBO, which is really good.
Yeah. Yeah, I wish it wasn't ending, honestly.
No, Brian, I didn't miss Dance of Dragons. It's just I don't remember what the last one was called. It was Dance of Dragons then. But I have a mind like a sieve. It doesn't hold on to anything. I blame it on the late 80s and early 90s.
I think we're around the same age.
Yeah, well, those were the years where I was, out and running kind of wild.
Yeah, me too.
Master of the Game says they're going to follow up the series with a prequel series. Yeah, I imagine they'd want to. That thing's a cash cow.
Oh gosh.
And,
Yeah, I
for,
remember hearing that too. I forgot about that, but
and of course, George, see, like he's never going to write another book. He's done. Even that prequel you
you're
said
right.
that prequel you said he's writing, he's probably not even writing. He's probably ghostwriting. He's like, I'm too busy being rich off of HBO money.
Yeah. Maybe you just get a transcript from HBO. They'll
Yeah,
write it for him.
I just anticipate he's gonna end up Robert Jordan and us. So that is a problem. I'm done with ranting on writers, novelists.
Too much success.
Yeah, yeah. I have a great analogy that I would tell about trashmen in my town where I used to live, but it'll only make me seem like an asshole, so I won't.
Now we all want to hear.
I know. Well, you know what? When I lived in one town, the trashmen were amazing. Anything I put out at the curb, they would take. They would have a special truck for it too, and it would come around and would take it. And you didn't pay those guys anything. It's really tragic, right? I come to where I'm at now, and my taxes are so much higher, and they have an automated truck for stuff, and it's terrible.
Right.
I can't get them to take anything.
Yeah, I get the little orange stickers on my trash can every once in a while.
Yeah.
We took it this time. Don't do that again.
Oh, so Master of the Game wants to know what type of scavenger prizes will we be giving at Gen Con?
I don't know. I mean, so I should probably talk to Dawn before I promise anything, but I think it would be things like maybe a set, T-shirt, that kind of stuff. That's usually what we give away is a set, which I don't have one sitting here at the moment, but so it comes in a burlap sack. You guys can see pictures of it online too, of the Jack the Ripper set with I have the stuff that comes in it.
Well, I mean, as always, and if you want to show that off, feel free. But as always, the links are in the description.
Yeah.
So we have the socials in there. We have the website in there. The Kickstarter is in there.
There's a playmat. The game itself is in the deck and beads. And it all comes in the plastic and cardboard of 1888. The burlap sack.
Nice. I think we started talking about the con schedule and kind of derailed. So I think we got Origins out, or no, we got the one that's local to you out.
Uh-huh.
Origins and Gen Con as attendees. Origins as a booth, Gen Con as attendees. Do you have any other ones planned?
Yeah, and I don't know the order of the dates and things like that, but we have things like DICON, which is in, I think it's Edwardsville, Illinois, and Midwest Game Fest. I think that's November. I probably should have brought the schedule up in front of me, but I don't actually have it here. I like to make games, and then Dawn's the president of the company because she says, "Okay, now you go over there and do that," and I do that.
You make games and be creative, and she does the thinking, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah. Well, and lucky for me, she's creative as well because she did all the artwork for Jack. She worked on the iconography with my daughter on House of Possession. We have a different artist for House of Possession. That was Alejandro Castillo worked on that. Awesome artist. I love the artwork. I mean, he just pulled off exactly what I was looking for. There's some influence there. We talked about Creepshow and things like that earlier. That's probably the sort of thing. I mean, I didn't want to look exactly like that, but for anybody who has seen it, where they have like the creature under the stairs in the box inside of the crate, and then there's these comic book like black and red behind it. That's the sort of imagery I was hoping for, and I think Alejandro pulled off like a modern version of that sort of feeling, you know.
Yeah, for the record, I think you can or should state that Alejandro did almost as good a job as on Jack the Ripper.
Because I'm married to John.
Yes, yeah, yes.
No, I mean I love the John did exactly what I wanted to. I mean, I put her through a lot of pain to do it, probably, but in Jack the Ripper, I wanted people to feel like they're stuck in this warehouse. So the story of Jack the Ripper is you're on a scavenger hunt. In 1888, you get stuck in this warehouse, and you realize that one of your members is Jack the Ripper. You just don't know who it is. So I wanted people to feel like they're like crawling through this dank warehouse trying to find something to protect themselves with. And when you find an item, it's like very shadowy around it. You don't hardly see it. She did great with that. I love it.
Sweet.
I think that got the feeling I was looking for as well.
And what more can you ask for from your artists?
Yeah.
So what's the next board game after House of Possession?
So we're working on another social game, but this is not a short. Like both House and Jack are 2 to 15-minute games, and this is more of like a party game where there's some storytelling interaction. I think what we're going to call it is Triggered, actually, where you're asking people to tell a story in a certain amount of time, and you want them to say certain words, and they want to use certain words based on the cards in their hand, and people around the table are hoping to hear certain words and things like that, right? So that's one of the next things, another interactive social kind of game. We are considering an expansion to Jack the Ripper later this year. Probably the very next thing is not a board game. The very next thing is I'm almost done with the one shot I was mentioning based on the map that Matt David put out from Dice Geeks. Not Streets of Realms of Understreets, as I went on a tangent and said earlier. But that's probably the very next thing is a small, short adventure, one-shot kind of thing.
So when you say one-shot, what do you mean? You mean like for RPGs a module?
Yeah, for D&D 5e kind of play. And I keep calling it a one-shot. I don't know if people have like strict ideas on how much time it should take or whatever. I'm thinking I should call it short adventure. It's probably 4 to 8 hours, depending on everybody's play style.
Yeah, I mean that's essentially a one shot. I mean that's a little bit long for a one shot, but a module generally gets done.
Yeah.
And, well, I guess it depends what you consider a module, right? Because back when we would have been buying modules, it was much different than what they look like now.
Right, because you had all the different possibilities in a module of things, quests and stuff like that. And this, I didn't do a whole lot of that. It's mainly a to B adventure kind of thing. It's just long. And 8 hours is like a one shot for us. When we sit around and play, like 6 hours that's usually the minimum game, I think.
Because like now when you buy, when you buy a pre-written adventure, it's a book. It's like you said, like with lots of options and choices, and this is going to take you from level 1 to 10 or level 10 to 20. Where before it was like this adventure is for characters that are 4 to 6 level, party of 4 to 6 players, and this is good for a night or a couple of nights.
Yeah, and that's kind of what this is. And I was thinking of the modules like where you have you got the map, and if you go here, you've got quests, and if you go here, you've got quests. That isn't what I did for this. Much more A to B.
More like Hamlet.
I haven't played that.
It was one of the early ones. It was like the precursor to Temple of Elemental Evil.
Okay.
Temple of Elemental Evil is like going back to that dungeon, I believe. So other ones that I can think of that are like kind of famous from back in the day. And then Temple of Elemental Evil too is when they started like really writing beefier adventures or modules where they're like thick compared to you used to get one that was like 30 to 60 pages. I want to say.
So did you guys play a lot of modules when you were younger?
Never.
Like I could go out and buy them? Yeah, we didn't either. We didn't have any money, so everything was homebrew. Somebody owned the core set, and then somebody would make up stuff. Lots of make 'em ups.
That's essentially what we did. Like our first GM, he did run me through. Like I did a solo adventure where it was just I was the only one that showed up that day. He was like, "Hey, you want to play some D&D?" And he pulled out Hamlet. And then we did do a little bit of Temple of Elemental Evil and Tomb of Horror, but for the most part, most of everything we did was always homebrew. I think the only time I've ever run like pre-written adventures is sometimes it's like, hey, do you guys want to play? Yeah, and I might have gone like I've definitely run the adventure from the back of Mutants and Masterminds, but the players never even knew that I was running. That I was running a pre-written adventure. And I've done stuff like that where it's like the intro from a game, I might throw that out there, just like getting the players started. But for the most part, yeah, we just made stuff up. I don't even know. Like I don't even know that someone else has mentioned about especially homebrew when you're broke. But we just never really thought to run pre-written adventures. I don't know why. I mean, it's not like we didn't know about them, but it just never occurred to us.
I think we just didn't want to spend the money. I think we wanted to buy beer and have somebody make stuff up.
Because what did I buy? I bought oh man. I think it was Queen of Spiders. Was that it? I know I owned that. Like that was definitely like that. You had all the like hot drow women in basically bikinis or lingerie on the cover.
Now we did buy the books like race books and class books and stuff like that. I probably have gnomes and wizards sitting back there.
Yeah, I regret all the stuff that I kind of got rid of. Some of it made it to Ted's house. But I kind of like my personality is, or used to be, is like, oh, I haven't touched this in 6 months. Trash it, get rid of it, clear it out.
Yeah, I just moved around so much. I lost a lot of stuff too.
You know, because for AD&D, I used to have all the books. I used to have all the, all the handbooks and complete guides. And so much so that like there was only one that I didn't have, and I eventually acquired. And spent way too much money on, and this is probably going back like almost 20 years when I finally acquired the Necromancer's Handbook, and I spent like $70-$80 on eBay.
Oh, gosh. For that. I thought about going back and buying stuff too. Now, I mean, at the time, it was comic books too, and I read comic books when I was a kid. It was like, oh, cool, I'm done. Throw it off in the corner, and then I got a little older. And I'm like, these should probably go in this acid-free bag, and
yeah.
And then I got married and had kids and sold everything.
Yeah, sometimes there's like this vicious cycle of selling and then rebuying the stuff you sold.
Yeah, I've considered buying so much stuff. Well, like lots of the D&D stuff too, especially.
I kind of want to just go and like go scavenger hunting through thrift shops and looking for stuff. I see people get a lot of good finds that way.
Yeah, get those gems hidden out there.
One of the guys we used to hang out with, he used to I don't know the name of the site that he used, but it's like a book trading and selling website. And he's like, every once in a while, he's like, I know I score this I'll make a great D&D score because I just know it's an angry spouse or a scorned ex that's just taken someone's collection and put it online.
Yeah, I might have to find that place.
Yeah. Your pain and suffering will fuel my collection.
I keep looking back. I'm like, I know I got an old one sitting over here. It's buried in with all the other books.
So we are coming right up on the hour mark. Parting words?
I mean, yeah, I hope everybody checks out the House of Possession Kickstarter. And also, like, maybe keep a watch on us for this idea of gamers in the apocalypse and doing crowd forging, not crowdfunding, crowd forging with us to kind of give us your ideas of what your favorite parts and your favorite tropes and that sort of thing about the apocalypse would be, and all of the cool ones, man. I'm going to make sure that there's something in the story, something in the mechanics, something somewhere that covers those really neat ideas for people.
Excellent. We'll have to keep an eye out for that. When you actually officially launch it, let us know too. Maybe we'll come
Oh
on
yeah,
here and talk about that a little bit. And
yeah. I'm testing too. I'll bring, use Roll20 or something like that for testing eventually as well.
oh, cool. So thanks for coming on, Ty. Thanks, Dawn, for hanging out in the chat, and everyone else who was in the chat as well. And until next time, stay nerdy.